So Aegon is 2 years old and Helena is coming? Although the time skips are happening each episode, they don't feel rushed. What has been feeling rushed for me was every individual scene. I wouldn't have written the episode so rushed, but that doesn't mean I'm not enjoying the show. In case you missed the last 2 reviews, I'm enjoying House of the Dragon. Though I think it's not been up to the level of the early seasons of Game of Thrones. But I think so far episode 3 was the best one because it took its time and reveled in the characters' problems that was set up in the previous episodes. 2 events are happening in the episode. The war against the Crab Feeder, where we follow Daemon and the Velaryons, and the second name day of Aegon, where we follow the politicking around Viserys and Rhaenyra, but delve deeper into their squabbles. The writers did an excellent job at portraying a teenage Rhaenyra, who probably has been through so much in the last few years. Adding to her grief for her mother, her relationship with Alicent is no more. She seems to no longer acknowledge Viserys' requests as her father, responding only when it's an order of the king. Rhaenyra also seems to already dislike his baby brother Aegon, comparing boars to babies. Grimly, when the boar tries to kill her later, squealing all over her, Rhaenyra delivers the final blows to the beast in an erratic manner. I would say this is the first time she displays a mindless rage, at least on screen, and especially against her brother. This episode had many examples of symbolism that are too obvious to ignore. The rage she had for the bull was in truth directed at her brother and her father, except that she's quite the typical teenager, I'd say, sneering and ignoring people. She even listens to Spotify when she's isolated from everyone else.
Did I say to stop?
Want a break from the ads? If you tap now to watch a short video, you'll receive 30 minutes of ad-free music. Yes, really. If you tap now to watch a short video, you'll receive 30 minutes of ad-free music.
Situations where she's dismissed for voicing her opinion, like in the second episode, have surely happened many times meanwhile. It is of no consequence to what I think, as I'm often reminded. It is simply frustrating as a viewer to see this character face so many obstacles even when the gods are sending her signals that she's the heir. All of her hatred for Aegon, Alicent or Viserys stem from one simple thing. Her opinions are not heeded by anyone, especially not her father. Perhaps if Viserys had started to include her in matters of the realm, she would have been more confident in the fact that she's heir. Being overshadowed by a brother is a ghost that has lived with her for all her life, but is accentuated with Aegon's birth. The Lannister asshole even asks Rhaenyra if her second name day was as grand as Aegon's. Later he also assumes Rhaenyra will not be queen, which Viserys quickly corrects. But her insecurities are not based on the fear of not being queen. Rhaenyra feels the same absence Daemon feels from Viserys. This episode was filled with symbolic imagery, but one of the most beautiful details I noticed was how Daemon and Rhaenyra are the only 2 characters in this episode drenched in blood because of Viserys in both cases, even if indirectly. Although he's a people pleaser, Viserys forgets his own and doesn't even know how to please his own family members. Viserys only has courage to stand by Rhaenyra when he's drunk. And it was one of the only times I was like, You go, girl. In second of his name, his relationships reach the height of antagonism, either with Daemon or Rhaenyra. For these last 2 years, Viserys presented possible suitors to Rhaenyra without showing any interest to who she might prefer or not, which he could have since he said he was drowning in letters of suitors. Of course, nobles and royalty must marry for duty, but Rhaenyra doesn't have a moment where her opinion matters, not even her marriage. Viserys also ignored Daemon for years, well knowing what he was doing in the Stepstones and how he seized Dragonstone. Brother and daughter are done with his passiveness and the will to please everyone else but them. This episode he takes action, but only because Alicent persuaded him that he should send help for Daemon and the Velaryons to be a good man. She too says it well when talking about the marriage for Rhaenyra. I do believe Rhaenyra will marry your grace, but she must believe it is a choice to do so. This episode, I could think only of Ned Stark saying, "War was easier than girls." In a way, I pity Viserys for not being able to take action, but at the same time, I despise him for not taking action as much as Daemon and Rhaenyra. Still, Alicent remains at Rhaenyra's side, much like in the last episode where she tried to mend Viserys' relationship with his daughter. It is nonetheless interesting to see her remain Rhaenyra's ally, even if she despises her. Alicent shows signs of a woman who's not quite happy with following her father's orders. Perhaps it is there that she finds common ground with Rhaenyra and understands her inner battles. As a queen, she's able to go against her father, who wants to persuade the king to name Aegon his heir. Would you have me raise a man to steal his own sister's birthright? She doesn't even like the idea of forcing her own son to usurp Rhaenyra's throne, which shows how caring she is as a mother and stepmother. It'll be interesting to see what changes her mind, since in the trailer we see her try to kill Rhaenyra. If there was an emotion that could describe this episode from the character's point of view, would be revolt and disappointment, centered around Viserys, Daemon and Rhaenyra. All of the characters grew to despise each other in one way or another. Even Rhaenyra holds a grudge against his uncle for not talking to her in years. Although annoying, the miscommunication trope does make sense by communicating how Viserys failed as a brother and a father, how Rhaenyra entered a rebellious teenage phase, and how Daemon is dying to thrive without his brother's aid. Matt Smith's performance was outstanding in this one, shining without having to utter a word. On the topic of acting, can we just talk about how bad the actor for Lena was? With peace and love, I can reproduce the lines the same way he did. He at least is fighting his war. What role have you played in this council, uncle, other than master of complaints? Meanwhile, Daemon is all fiery and inciting mutiny. Anyway, that's the one flaw I found in this episode. Daemon is cross with his brother for good reason, although I also understand Viserys' POV as a king trying to protect the realm. When the king finally sends help, Daemon just loses it, and rightfully so. After years of knowing what's going on, only now he sends help. So it wasn't character that he was so fucking mad that he had to take down the crab feeder that instant just to stick it to Viserys. And that's when my crush on Daemon was set in stone. Emotions stirred in the main characters that cannot be undone are making House of the Dragon stand at Game of Thrones level. The strong symbolism like fire and blood, the gods and the white hart, is what makes A Song of Ice and Fire so great. And the creators of the show haven't forgotten what makes Martin's world special. This is easily the best episode so far. So tell me if you agree or not, and I'll see you next time. Bye.